FM.
So we've been asking that question, and I really would like to know what's the immediate solution and what's the long-term solution to this ongoing, decades-old Palestine-Israel conflict. WhatsApp, you can text me or you can voice note. Either way, it's welcome. 061 766 0355. Right. Certainly want to hear what your thoughts are on this. Right now, having said that. Professor Thuli Madonsela, the former public protector, currently is the chair in social justice research based at the University of Stellenbosch. And she spoke the other day at the Nadine Gordimer lecture to the title or the theme of the audacity to speak the inconvenient truth. So I thought, well, let's pick up on that with her and get her to explain what that means and maybe some examples of speaking the inconvenient truth. Prof Madonsela, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining me. Can you hear me? Okay, I just want to try and get that connection with Zia. Right. Prof Madonsela, can you hear me? Okay, we need to sort this out. Just my apology for that. We'll try and get that sorted out with Ziad, my technical guy, in just a moment or so. By the way, so there's been, just talking about the other things. We'll speak about Eid coming up in a few days' time, and your thoughts on that. And while we sort out that sound, I think there's some messages that we've got. So let's get Rahima just to comment on that. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, listeners. And Ashraf, yes, I've got an interesting comment from somebody. He says, Assalamu alaikum, Ashraf. With all due respect, we're living in a very different time from 30 years back. Compared to the present time, seeing that they have the support of the UN and USA because of economical ties, and they blatantly commit crimes without any concern for the rest of the world watching. We should, South Africa, continue putting pressure on the USA and the UN. And lastly, as South Africans, put our foot down on these companies that infiltrated themselves in our country, that manipulate our currency and our people with the billions that they flash to our governments. That's a very interesting comment.
Well, yeah, and it talks about the politics of boycott. How effective is boycotting as a policy? Now, one may say, and I know people talk about Israel and they refer to chips for computers. So, well, if you're doing that, boycott everything. And yes, there are contradictions.
Yes.
But in South Africa as well, if you didn't start somewhere, nothing will ever happen. And we know that South Africa, ultimately, apartheid South Africa wilted under the pressure of a global economic boycott. Started with sport and then moved on to the economic issues as well. So, yeah, that certainly happened. Okay, I think we're okay now with Professor Thuli Madonsela. Prof Madonsela, appreciate your time. Good morning. Can you hear me? Hopefully you can. Okay, now I'm battling to hear you. I'm so sorry about this. We need to sort this out. I just need to get Ziad, who technical controls me, so I can hear Prof Madonsela, because otherwise we're not going to get anywhere with raising these type of issues here. Further questions are most welcome. You have any further thoughts? Yeah.
I was just thinking now, the comment we just received is quite interesting. And I think, unfortunately, in a country where, companies are flashing billions to our government, considering all that's going on with the Zondo Commission and state capture, it definitely is something attractive.
Well, I mean, look, I think some expenses have got to be spent, like the Zondo Commission, which is something different. I think in this case here, the question is with regard to Israel and Palestine. What more needs to happen now that has not happened in the last 20, 30 years? Because there seems to be this ongoing attrition and there's no real solution. There doesn't seem to be a solution on that. So the point is, you still continue the same way that it's been going on all these years, and just hope somehow by chance there's going to be peace and justice, or not. Something has to happen. Okay, I think we're okay now, finally, with Professor Madonsela. Third time lucky, hopefully. Prof Madonsela, appreciate your time. Good morning.
Good morning, dear Ashraf, and thank you for the privilege.
All right, I was worried that we're not going to be able to connect with you, so I'm glad that we can, right? Let's pick up. I'm talking to you specifically because I was fascinated by the talk you gave under the Nadine Gordimer lecture, and you chose a topic, the audacity to speak the inconvenient truth. So is that a topic they gave you or you chose?
I chose the topic based on my understanding of what Nadine stood for.
Okay, why did you choose that topic?
Because I thought there were parallels between what we are faced with and what she was faced with. He was a relatively privileged person in a society that oppressed and excluded others. And she felt that her burden of privilege was to use the one tool in her power, which was her voice and her ability to write, to tell the truth as she saw it, to get people in order to take action to move the needle on justice. And I was then saying, people like me, you and others are privileged. I'm privileged because of having received the low-lying fruits of democracy. Others are privileged because they've built on the accumulated advantages of apartheid. But it doesn't matter where our privilege comes from. The reality is our burden of privilege is to look around us and say, what are the inconvenient truths of our time that need to be spoken, that we can shift the justice consciousness so that people's lives can be improved.
So let's take the South African context. Firstly, who should be speaking the inconvenient truth?
Anybody who feels the burden of knowing something that they think the world needs to know about. The focus, of course, was primarily on writers and professionals. Hence, I spoke about Nadine Gordimer and her contemporaries, such as Ken Campbell, Dennis Brutus, Alex Laguma, etc. And then in our time, you have to also include lawyers, professionals like me and you, media personalities that don't do writing. Because even her, she spoke about writers like her, but she also found some resonance with people like George Bezos, Nelson Mandela, and others who used their voice to make people aware that what was happening was unjust and unnecessary, that there was a better world out there. The injustices she saw were twofold. One was, of course, the social injustice, which at the time was exclusion of Black people and overburdening them under the apartheid laws. But she spoke a little bit about class and a little bit about gender. She also spoke about excesses in the exercise of state power, where the state becomes too powerful, oppressive, and unaccountable. And that conversation she continued even when the governors changed from the oppressive apartheid leaders to our own leaders. It became an inconvenient truth in that people think if you are their friend and if you are like them, you should look the other way when there are excesses. And in our time, some of the inconvenient truths are about, has government done enough on social justice? Could it do better? But secondly, state capture. Some of the people involved are our friends, our comrades, and it's an inconvenient truth to say something about it.
Well, I think it was a very good point. So how do you manage? I mean, you're quite right. I mean, you've been part of the struggle yourself. Then you become the public protector, so you effectively represent the people, which means that you spend a lot of time highlighting issues against what's right for the country, for the state, and therefore you create, but you don't deliberately do that, but unintended enemies then emerge. Friends become enemies, right? On a personal level, Prof Madonsela, how do you cope with that?
It's really about honoring my own truth. But understanding, as Nadine Gordimer says in her Nobel Peace speech, your truth is your truth. It might not be universal, but just be honest in telling the truth as you see it. And how we see the truth may be evolving. So for me, it's always been for justice. It's always been a case of feeling privileged. Even when I was young, I felt relatively privileged compared to others. And I started seeing injustices on gender, Black Administration Act, women having their homes taken away because under apartheid they were made permanent children. And race, people being arrested and kicked out of their homes for past laws by blackjack policemen, those people called blackjack. So how do I do it? It's always just reminding myself that I'm here for a purpose. I've been privileged, or I've been the recipient of grace for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And the best I can do to pay for the grace that I have received and continue to receive is to make sure that this world is a better place for everyone in the generations that will come after us.
And then when you get the pushback, and I certainly see the pushback on social media, even with people like yourself, Prof Madonsela, that she represents this interest and that interest group, from others who obviously oppose you. How then do you actively respond against that sort of thing? Because sometimes it doesn't just come from Twitter trolls, but it actually comes from high-ranking political figures.
I must say, just to be honest, during COVID-19, when I didn't realize that, like everyone else, I was stressed and anxious, when I received the pushback, I pushed back a little bit harder a bit. And having realized that that was not who I was, I went back to my normal self, which is understanding that people do the best they can. When they know better and they are wired better, they do better. And it's not personal. When people attack me, it's because they're afraid that I am disrupting the world as they know it, or the world they want it. And part of the world that they want is a world where you can steal with impunity, as long as you give some crumbs to certain communities and certain persons. And therefore, if you disrupt those pipelines, people feel they hate. I mean, look at Lucky Montana. There's so much evidence against him.
Yes.
But there's still people who send me these messages where they say, you lied. I mean, it doesn't matter how much evidence is there on state capture, but the Zuma Gupta alliance had elements of looting the state. But they still say, you lie, you destroy people's lives. And at the end of the day, I do understand that these people are receiving some crumbs from these franchises.
Well, interesting. You talk about people being afraid. I wonder whether you are afraid and what, in fact, you are afraid of. Think about that for a moment, because I'll get a response from you right after this.
Thank you.
This is the Ashraf Garda Show, 8 to 10 a.m., and you are listening to Salam Media.
She's got a social justice project.
Huda SA is an organization that focuses primarily on assisting communities within the Etequeni region by collaborating with existing Islamic centers, mosques and madrasas. Your contribution goes towards the uplifting of orphans and vulnerable children, including vulnerable families, by assisting with education, welfare, nutrition and maintenance of madrasas, mosques and Islamic community centers. Make the difference. Donate to our noble causes. More information is available at huda-int.org or WhatsApp or call us on 031 271 3049.
What a Muslim should do.
Give me that make me strong.
It's good we've got this extra minutes.
Osman's Taj Mahal Spice and Rice. For over 80 years, Osman's Taj Mahal have been perfecting the art of the perfect blend of spices, pure, aromatic, and well-seasoned. Spices to tantalize your taste buds. From creative cuisines to gastronomical gourmet goodies, from exotic odors to traditional dishes, Osman's Taj Mahal have remained synonymous with quality spices and condiments. Taj Mahal rice, beans, and lentils. Try our range of chili bite mixes, rose and elaichi syrup, our quick and easy biryani pack, and our traditional range of spice blends. Osman's Taj Mahal. There is no substitute for quality.
This Ramadan, can we still feel the heartbreak?
Now we've chatted on air, off air.
Islamic relief needs you to keep feeling, because the believers are like one body. When any part aches, the whole body aches. Feel their pain. From just 450 Rand, you can ease their pain this Ramadan. Donate now to Islamic Relief.
This is the weave.
Visit
Establish what does she mean by that, establish her own ideas and the pushback, and then to give her examples, to give us examples of that. Now you speak truth. Tell us about a few things. Pronounce on it. In the
Murtala
industry as well.
Perfumes,
So,
one of the
right.
biggest perfume
We can't
manufacturing
really,
houses in
you could
Africa,
speak it for
with a
us.
state-of-the-art manufacturing facility specializing in
And
designing,
this is
creating,
without
developing,
spending
and
a few.
producing new
That's why I
scents
said
and
ideally
matching
whether you need
design
like 3, 5,
fragrances
7 minutes.
for all our stores, as well as private labeling for individuals and companies across Africa. Visit your nearest Murtala Perfumes store. Visit our website at www.murtalaperfumes.com for more information on creating your own brand.
Over 30,000 children were treated at the emergency centre at Red Cross War Memorial Children's Hospital in 2020. This year, the Children's Hospital Trust calls on you to gift your charity towards the purchasing of life-saving medical equipment.
Elevate your Ramadan, share your Sadaqah Jariyah and give the gift of life to sick and injured children. Donate today. Visit childrenshospitaltrust.org.za.
Elevate your Ramadan, elevate your rewards.
Mates Linen e-sale now on. Pop in store for these amazing deals. Quilts from 170 Rand. Private collection standard pillows, twin pack from 80 Rand. Pierre Cardin duvet covers from 250 Rand. Assorted scatters from 100 Rand. Winnie stockers of linen house range and designer curtains by Stuart Graham. Let Mates Linen turn your house into a home. Mates Linen branded outlet, 202 Brickfield Road, Overport, Devon. Call us on 031 209 0176.
This is the Ashraf Goddess Show, 8 to 10 a.m. and you are listening to Salam Media.
So chatting to Professor Thuli Madonsela, former Public Protector Council, get remove that title because I think that so many people are aware of the work she's done based on that. But of course, there's a whole lot more. She currently is the chair in social justice research at the University of Stellenbosch, and we're speaking to her on the basis of a talk she gave recently called the Audacity to Speak the Inconvenient Truth. That is at the annual Nadine Gordimer lecture. So, Prof Madonsela, I asked you a question about what is it that what are you scared of?
What I'm scared of mostly is that by the time everyone, particularly our leaders, awaken to the fact that people cannot tolerate poverty and structural inequality forever, it might be too late. But by the time we awaken to that reality and take decisive action for every family and every ward in this country and in the world, it might be too late. That extremism might have reached a tipping point, and once that happens, it will be more difficult to push back for social justice, for the rule of law.
So what do you see happening in South Africa now? I mean, we don't have enough time, but we know there are huge issues around social justice problems and extreme poverty, and we have different political parties that work and don't work. What's the one thing you want to see happening right now?
I think in particular, I would like white people in political parties to understand that we have the responsibility to address the imbalances of the past. Yes, we all want to save democracy. Yes, we all want to end corruption and state capture, but that's not the only deal. White people and privileged black people need to understand that it is our responsibility now to join hands and make a difference to end poverty and inequality. I was listening to one of your adverts just now, and I was really touched by it about the need to make sure that no one is left behind.
Yeah. How do people listening? How do they then literally and figuratively join hands?
My call to people right now is twofold. One is increase the work you are doing to make a difference. I've been listening again to your radio station. A lot of it has been about charity, but go beyond charity and lift people into social mobility. So let's do that and let's join hands. We have a Musa plan for social justice, for which you are one of the councillors. Let's join hands and make sure that this plan, which is about all hands on deck on social justice, gains ground and lifts people's lives, changes policy. At the level of government, government is about to implement the Chapter 5 of the Equality Act, which has been frozen for 21 years. I would like people to tell government that no, government, you can't freeze an act for 21 years, and when you implement it, you water it down. You can't water down an act that was crafted with Madiba's personal leadership and give it to one civil servant with all of the good intentions, but having been raised under apartheid, educated under apartheid, cannot comprehend what needs to be done to disrupt inequality in South Africa today.
Yeah, I think that's so much. What's your quick thought on? We've got about 2 minutes ago. Your quick thought on the ANC dealing with Ace Mafashule?
Well, I would say that I'm glad that the governing party is making sure that there's a rule of law in its own structures. And it's not for me about Mr. Mafashule. It's just making sure that they obey their own rules, because the governing party governs South Africa. And therefore, its ethical ethos in the organization translates to the ethical ethos they bring to governing South Africa.
The other one, of course, very topical, is the ongoing, the escalating violence, in Palestine, Israel, Palestine. It's an ongoing story. Human Rights Watch, describes Israel's, and I'm quoting, systemic oppression of Palestinians as a crime of apartheid. How do you see it?
Well, what's happening in apartheid is unjust. And what's happening in Palestine is unjust and cruel. And the whole world should stand up. And again, it was about that advert that you had, which said, when one part of the body hurts, the rest of the body hurts. Palestine is us, and we are Palestine. But I just think with Israel, when people don't confront their part hurts, they can be cruel. And I think Israel and people who are victims of previous injustices need to look at their wiring. And neuroscience is telling us, need to look at their wiring and say, can they still be compassionate? And because what's happening to Palestinians is wrong. And for me, I'm not anti-Israeli. Israelites and Jews are humans like all of us. They deserve to be happy. But that cannot happen at the expense of Palestinians. You can't just randomly kill people in the mosque. You can't just randomly take people home. You just can't randomly be cruel. That's what happened to us here in South Africa. And we're still dealing with consequences of that. So everyone should wake up to what's happening in Palestine and what's happening everywhere in the world, because we are an interconnected world. And as long as there's injustice somewhere, there can't be sustainable peace anywhere.
Now, having said that, I mean, the reality is this attrition has been going on for years, right? Something has to change dramatically, in spite of the things you said, for us to reach a lasting justice and then peace in that region. What needs to happen?
I think two things need to happen. One is the world needs to come to the party and not really scatter around the issue and just apply the rules of justice to everyone equally. I mean, we're dealing with the Palestinian issues when we dealt with human rights law, humanitarian law, and international law when I was studying it first. And you're right, we're still dealing with the same thing about, at that stage it was about the treatment of PLO combatants needing to be given the same treatment as soldiers are given. So today, and thanks to Yasser Arafat and his counterpart on the other side, things almost got better. The two-state solution was almost done, and now things are degenerated. So what needs to happen is, at the level of the world, the UN needs to come together and agree on a new approach to Israel. At the level of Israel, I would say to the leaders, you are descendants of people who were hurt horribly, and there's a chance that your wiring is now lacking in compassion. So for me, it's not just about justice, it's about reclaiming your humanity and just understand that this is wrong. No justification can be acceptable for this cruel.
Yeah. Some may say that if I look at the South African example very quickly, that in spite of opposition to apartheid South Africa, nothing happened until systemic boycotts around the world, diplomatic boycotts and then economic boycotts, and then apartheid South Africa changed. That hasn't happened to a large degree against Israel because of particularly big business support and particularly the US veto at the United Nations there. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's true that sanctions had a contribution to what happened in South Africa. Papers that have recently been donated by, say, Hanks to Stellenbosch University show that it was beyond the boycott or the sanctions. Also, the financial institutions came to the party to push South Africa to do the right thing. And therefore, I do agree that something needs to be done, but it needs to start with dialogue around where we are, what's right, what's wrong, what can be done. And let's see. I mean, I know that in America, for example, with a person like Obama, whose notion of justice is not just us, there's now a possibility of leadership, global leadership, that can ignite new talks about what.
Absolutely. Here's the last thing. I mean, is it fair to say that as long as the United States, that is, as long as the United States exercises their veto at the Security Council, the Israeli leadership knows they can continue to a large degree with a high degree of impunity. Surely that should change?
I do think that with President Joe Biden, it's going to change. And again, for me, I'm saying, Ashraf, that it should start with talking. I'm looking at South Africa today, Ashraf, 27 years into democracy, 25 years into implementation of the Constitution. There are still people who honestly believe that this country should just continue as is. And all we need to do is to make sure everyone is educated, everyone comes from a good family. They do not understand that we need restitutive measures, we need remedial measures. So to get those people to the table, you need to come and talk to them about ordinary mathematics. I think in Israel, there are those who are just dug in for Israel to be safe. They need to secure their borders, and in their own minds, securing their borders means subjugation of the Palestinians. They can't see an alternative way of maintaining their own safety without eroding the humanity of others.
Okay, lastly, who needs to make the first move?
I would say South Africa can make the first move and bring together people to the party. That's what Keith Errol Bernstein, he thought that because of the pain we've been through and our ability to move out of that pain through, in large part, negotiations, and the fact that from that crucible of sadness and pain, we have created leaders such as Martin Luther King in the US and in South Africa, Nelson Mandela. That leadership can come together and bring the world into thinking there is a world beyond the one we know, a world where everyone's humanity is embraced, a world where my safety does not mean somebody else's death or somebody else's oppression.
On that note, let's leave it at that, because it certainly puts the ball in South Africa's court, in fact, to draw on our own South African apartheid and democratic experience. Prof Madonsela, thank you for your input. Really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll have another chat sometime soon. Always look forward to conversing with you in one way or the other. So thank you for your time.
A privilege.
There we are, Professor Thuli Madonsela, Chair in the Social Justice Research Project that's at the University of Stellenbosch. Some really important issues on the audacity to speak the inconvenient truth, be it South Africa, in this case also very topical, be it Palestine and Israel. Make of that what you will.
Media via studio 010-880-2396. or WhatsApp
Durban
061 766 0355.
Our listeners don't listen to it. I'm prepared to say this.
The Ashraf Garda Show,
Durban
8
guys
to 10 a.m. on
I'll take
Salam
responsibility.
Media.
What I've got for them is gold.
Connect with Salam Media on Twitter.
Stupid news versus gold.
I agree. I'm just scared
I'll
of
take.
bureaucracy.
I'm fine. Man of charm.
When we look at the morning, we see a lot
All I can say is don't come back and I'm only one day left. No, it's an instinctive gut feeling, but I can't do the SAFM. I could do it because the whole news is just changing. I know. So it's just an in the moment thought. You can't. I did say we need half an hour. You said she was speaking. I was expecting you to speak more about the once she was speaking more, she was making the news.
anything, no allegations, no claims. What
You wouldn't say she's making the news.
In Orion Cold Storage for the situation it finds itself in now?
The guardian of the public interest.
Corruption in South Africa includes the private
And you know she's been accused of being
sources,
soft on Israel and
bribery,
Palestine
and
before. Like she's gone to the Jewish Federation parties and then she's gone, right? In South Africa.
But at the end of the day,
So she has.
facts
So that is
and
why
truth
it's significant.
that has to be revisited.
Father to a
It
fool.
was not probably
Because they like me. Tell them they must pay me. All right. So now we're going to Rendery, right?
By the evil of pornography, like they are with music today.
No, that's fine. That's it. If they didn't,
what should be
then
the
they've done
response
exactly
from the
what I
Ummah? What should basically happen
Now
in
that's
such type
leadership.
of situations?
We stick your neck out and say, we got this or we got something more profound.
I'm honest.
Don't.
Oh, my hands have been tied.
This is the Ashraf Garda Show, live and exclusive on Salam Media and One Nation FM.
Okay, I'm not sure whether I should apologize for not having the news at the time, but I think Prof Madonsela effectively made the news by her pronouncements, not just on South Africa and the black-white issues in our country, and where we managed with sanctions to move on, but particularly around Palestine and Israel and what needs to happen next. So in that case, her pronouncements I think made the news, and therefore we've stuck with that.